North Star shone brightly amidst the dancing green lights of the aurora, illuminating the night sky and causing the snow to glitter with icy crystals. The woods were covered in a thick white blanket. There were no tracks visible, nor was there any sound to be heard. Not the whistling of birds, nor the rustling of the pine branches in the Arctic breeze. The only sound heard was the crunching of footsteps on an old, snow-worn trail, squirming uphill between the trees. There were 5 people, saying not a word and relying only on the starlight for guidance. An 8-year-old Njal was among them. With weary, frost-bitten legs, he tried keeping up with his father, uncle, brother, and sister for as long as they could carry him. The walk from the village seemed to have lasted for hours. Njal could no longer feel his feet, nor move his fingers around in the sleeves in which he hid them. He was exhausted and desperate for sleep, but he did not complain. Now was not the right time. Njal! He startled, feeling like he woke from a dream when the warm voice of his father called out his name, and when he looked up, he found he was lagging far behind the rest. He could feel their gazes upon him. Father came over, his first making him look like a giant. He went down to one knee and rested his big, heavy hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right?" Njal looked at his feet and nodded slowly, his eyes hidden from his father by his unkempt auburn locks. "Look at me," he said. Njal did as asked, trying his best not to show a hint of the sadness he felt. His father's eyes were hooded, narrow, and grey, just like his own. They always seemed to read him so well, no matter how hard he tried to avoid it. "I know you are tired, but I need you to be strong right now. We are almost there, I promise. Can you carry on for me?" Njal had no choice but to nod softly, diverting his face away once more as he bit his lower lip. Father looked back up towards the others. "Is there a problem, Gunnar?" said his uncle Birkar. "It's nothing. Keep going. We are almost there." When getting back up his feet, he gave Njal a gentle pat on the back. "Come on, son," he said with his soft, warm voice. "Do it for mother." Njal could hear his father had a hard time saying those words, probably just as hard as it was for him to hear them. When father turned around and started back up the hill, Njal silently dropped some tears into the snow before him. "Do it for mother," he whispered softly to himself. He took a deep breath, wiped his eyes with his sleeve, which the frost had made hard and stiff, and carried on. As they struggled up the steep, slippery trail, Njal started realizing just how fast everything had changed. It was only yesterday that he stood by the edge of the village to see his mother's body carried up the same path he was walking now. He held her hand all the way to that point, crying, feeling it go cold and lifeless, until his brother Almer, a strong boy of 14, held him and pulled him loose. The fever had taken her so quickly, her body weakened by years of scarcity and hard work, taking care of the family. She was on her own for most of the time, for father was often away, serving the royal court of Moravia in its capital city of Loki. With nobody left to care for the family now, father insisted they would pack what they could carry and move to the city to live with Uncle Birkar, where they would be relatively safe from cold and starvation. Before they would depart, however, they would pay their last respects to the woman they had all loved so much, and witness her departing on her own journey. The spirits in the sky were calling for her. Njal knew his life would never be the same again. He would now leave the village where he had spent his whole life, and his house would fall into ruin, like the many others in the village that had been abandoned before. He desperately tried to remember what it looked like, and carved a sight into his mind. The bearskin tapestry by the fire, his bed standing in the far right corner of the house, tucked in between the rugged stone walls and the bed of his sister. The wooden cupboards, the benches, and always the pleasant warm air that thawed his body when he returned from the cold outside. The large bed of his parents stood at the far left corner of the house, and he had spent many of the past few days there by his mother's side. He would often keep her company, while Almer and his sister Siri, a girl of 12, would chop firewood, keep it burning, prepare dinner, and take care of the housekeeping as best as they could. When mother's health declined, he often huddled himself against her body amidst the soft, warm furs, hoping he could take at least some of the disease away from her. The day before she died, when he lay beside her, she told him to close his eyes, and then he felt something was put into his hand. She had given him her amulet, he found, carved of black steel and holding a small, milk-white moonstone. And she told him that when wearing it, she would always be with him. As he climbed the icy path uphill towards the edge of the tree line, Njal felt the amulet gently touching his bare chest, and somehow the thought of it comforted him. After what felt like hours of climbing, the woods finally opened up before him, and the magnificent view from the summit of the hill made Njal forget about his sadness for a while. To the south lay the narrow, forested valley from where they had come, and where he had spent his whole life, hidden carefully amidst the rugged mountains towering around it on all sides. To the northeast, beyond the ridge, vast stony highlands and deep dark forests of the kingdom of Moravia stretched out endlessly ahead of him. All the way in the distance, above the fog clouds that shielded the horizon, he could see a magnificent mountain towering up high above everything else. Its jagged peak seemed to touch the aurora as it danced through the sky. It was the Olisir, the largest of all mountains, and the place where the world had once begun. Father had told him once that wherever in the four kingdoms of Svôzin one would find himself, it would always be visible to guide the way back home. They were heading into its direction soon, Njal knew, for Father had told him that the city of Lokin lay under its colossal shadow. Close to the ridge stood an ancient-looking stone circle of huge, dark grey monoliths. Between the snow, Njal saw the runes that were written on them, as well as the images of the gods. In between the stones, he saw his mother lying on a funeral pile that was prepared with walrus fat. She looked so different than Njal had imagined. She was pale, stiff, and lifeless, almost unrecognizable. It caused Njal's stomach to turn at the sight. From behind one of the stones came forth the village elder. His name was Hjalmar, a wrinkled old man in ragged grey robes who lived in a simple shack just below the tree line. He was probably older than 100 years, Njal thought, and he seemed so wise that none of the world's mysteries were a secret to him. Given that it was him who cared for Njal and his siblings while Father was away, and that he tried everything he could to save Mother's life, he considered Hjalmar much more a father than his own. Gunnar, he said with a soft, hoarse voice as he spread his arms slowly and hugged Father. It is good you have come. I wanted to see her one last time, he said. I wasn't there when she needed me most. I tried to, but I failed. For the first time in his life, Njal could have sworn he heard his voice break. When he saw mother's health deteriorating, he set out to Lokim to beg the temple for aid. When he returned yesterday, along with Uncle Berkar, it was already too late. "You did everything you could, my boy," said Hjalmar. "I am sure she would be grateful that you are here." "It is the least I could do." As he said that, Hjalmar smiled lightly at him through his shaggy white beard. "So it is, my child." When he had greeted them all, and the family had taken one last look at mother's lifeless, pale body, he pointed up to the aurora. "The spirits are dancing. We should not let them wait," he said, bidding them to sit around the pile, and, in sight of the gods on the ancient runestones, they would now watch Mother's soul depart to the spirit world. They all sat together, body against body, and when Hjalmar had finished his prayers to the gods, his hands came out of his long sleeves, rubbing them together briskly as he faced the pile. He opened his hands slightly in front of his mouth, and as he blew, a bright flame came flashing out that was powerful enough to ignite the pile immediately. Njal had long known that Hjalmar was a mage, but he did so little with this rare gift and was so secretive about it that every time he did cast a spell, it was spectacular to watch. He felt tears welling up in his eyes again as he saw the flames taking hold of his mother's body. And he saw he was not the only one. Ciri burst out crying and buried her head into father's furs, who laid his arm around her as he watched in silence. Uncle Berkar was staring into the fire, his mind clearly away. Somehow, Njal knew he was reliving the memories he had of his sister. Almer sat next to him, his lower lip shaking as he winced, trying to keep in his tears. Njal tried to do the same. He had to be strong, father always said. Strong like Almer, and the strong don't cry. He wiped his eyes and forced himself to keep watching as the flames had risen to 3 meters high, and a thick column of black smoke vanished into the darkness. Soon, he had learned, the smoke would carry his mother's soul to the aurora. The gods were out there, along with the spirits of his forefathers and all other living beings. It was always warm there, he was told, and the food was delicious and plenty. In a way, Njal was glad that mother would go out there. She would now be free of hunger, free of the cold, and free of the cursed disease that had taken her life. He followed the smoke rising up into the night sky, and then, at the blink of an eye, he saw a couple of golden light bulbs vaguely dancing around in the aurora. Njal wiped the tears from his eyes to have a closer look, expecting the lights to be gone. But they weren't. In fact, they had only grown brighter, and before long, all the more plentiful. As he looked at them closer, the light bulbs, slowly but surely, took the shape of animals that were playfully but silently moving through the aurora. Njal did not believe what he saw, and his jaw dropped in awe as he beheld the stellar spectacle above him. He saw an eagle soaring by quietly on a faraway current, and a group of deer running through the lights and vanishing as soon as they touched the black of the night sky. He also saw a bear chasing after fish that swam in invisible waters, 2 wolves playing around with their pup, and flocks of birds flying around. It looked so joyful, and though Njal looked up incredulously and wondered whether his fatigue caused his eyes to play tricks on him, he felt a strong desire to be up there. He wondered what it was he saw. Were they spirits? Or ghosts? Were they even real? Or was he just dreaming that he was seeing them? Njal looked around to see if any of the others had noticed it too, but none of them seemed to have. Once again, he looked up, amazed by what he saw, as more and more animals became visible like stars when letting your eyes adjust to the darkness. He noticed gulls, boars, beavers, squirrels, and walruses, among others. And before long, the entire sky was filled with golden beings, dancing around the aurora in all their silent splendor. Never before had Njal seen something so beautiful. He startled suddenly, as from behind the funeral pile, a deer came forth. He crawled backwards a little bit, incredulous that no one else seemed to have even noticed it. She was gentle and soft-footed, transcendent, and her contours emitted the same bright golden glow as all the other creatures above her. For a moment, his eyes crossed those of Hjalmar, who was sitting a short distance away from the family, and studied him carefully, as if he noticed something was wrong. Yet, the old man made no hesitation to ask him what was going on. He just kept observing him. Njal's attention then quickly turned back to the deer in the corner of his eye, who started moving around gently, observing both him and the others quietly. Njal noticed that around her the snow was replaced by tall grasses, dotted with bright flowers, just as golden and transcendent as she was herself. There appeared some golden butterflies too, hopping from the one to the other flower before disappearing into the darkness. Njal remembered suddenly that Mother told him stories of things such as grass and flowers and butterflies, stories of birds singing amidst green, mossy forests. It was what everything used to look like long ago. To him, it all sounded like a fantasy, for in all his life there had been nothing but snow and ice. There was nothing green in the real world. After moving around for a bit and sniffing around here and there, she turned her attention to Njal, looking him straight in the eye. It was not an intimidating gaze, however, and he felt no fear of her. In fact, somehow, he just felt it was his mother looking back at him. He had no notion as of how long he was watching the ghost that stood before him, but the longer he did, the more he started to feel at ease. She came closer, and Njal felt the urge to reach out and touch her, but he relented, fearing he would attract the attention of the others. He just kept looking into the eyes of the deer without saying a word, and she kept looking back. Njal no longer felt the cold, nor his sadness anymore. It was as if the deer had comforted him, filling his soul with such a pleasant warmth that he felt like he was back in home in Mother's safe, warm arms, and all was still well. The deer then finally turned away. She sniffed at the pile, looked at the others one last time, and then, effortlessly, ran up into the sky, floating gently towards the heavenly lights, and eventually joined a group of deer that were running around within them. Slowly but surely, the animals started to disappear, and Njal felt a sense of panic creeping into his body along with the returning cold. He followed the deer, running into the distance until she disappeared. And when he looked back down, Njal saw that Mother's body was gone, as were the grass and the flowers. She was no more now, and he knew he would never see her back again. A huge wave of sadness and grief then began to hit him in his core. Hjalmar diverted his gaze away from Njal, looking to the pile and the rising smoke, and then got up with the effort expected from a man of his age. "It is done," he said, as he gave Father a small nod. "She is in the spirit world now." Father got up, helping Siri back up her feet, and the rest of the family followed soon. "God's be good to her. May she be in peace," Father said, Thank you, Hjalmar, for everything. Your kindness will not be forgotten. The old man bowed lightly, his eyes sparkling. I have one kindness left to give to you, he replied, as he gestured towards his shack a little while back down the hill. I see all of you are exhausted. Over in my shack are warm blankets, some of my food reserves, and a fire. See to it that you rest up well. There is a long journey ahead of you. I cannot thank you enough, said Father, as he bowed to the old man. If there is ever anything that we can do for you in return. If you can, I would appreciate if some rations were sent for the village. Most of our able-bodied hunters have long left. I fear those that remain here will not survive for much longer if they are not fed quickly. Of course, we will see to it. He looked at Uncle Berka, who nodded eagerly. The king will hear of your request. You can count on us. Good, said Hjalmar with a gentle smile. Then I'd suggest we get down inside. The cold is unforgiving. As the rest of his family started down the hill, Njal stayed where he was, staring into the fire with tears in his eyes, desperately hoping the deer would come back and ease the pain he felt inside. Though he had hoped the others would carry on down the hill without him, it did not take long before Uncle Berka noticed him as he turned to comfort Elmer. Come on, boy, he called out to him. You'll freeze to death out there. Njal felt everybody gazing at him, exactly what he wanted to avoid. He refused to turn around, let alone say anything. He would break if he tried. Njal, said Father. Go on, I'll talk to him. He then heard Hjalmar's soft voice say behind him. The others were leaving, and before long, Hjalmar had come over, reached out his hand and helped him up his feet. They were all alone now. I sense so much pain and sadness within you, my child. Now there is nothing left to shame for. Let it go. Finally, Njal stopped holding back his grief and cried out harder than he ever did before, unleashing all he didn't want his family to see while burying his face into Hjalmar's robe. Go on, child. Let it out. You have every right to cry, said the old man as he rubbed his hand softly across his back. Thank you, Njal replied between his sobbing. When he was done, he let go of Hjalmar's robe, sobbing still, and the old man wiped the tears from his cheekbone with a gentle stroke of his thumb. He smiled through his beard, and Njal twisted his mouth in a light smile to express his gratitude. As he let go, he snorted and looked back to the fire once again, and then to the sky above it. There was nothing to see there anymore, as if the dozens of spirits had never even been there. Hjalmar, he said, hesitating shortly whether he would tell it. There was something in the sky. Hjalmar did not reply, and when Njal looked back, the old man suddenly looked very concerned, as if his words had troubled him deeply. I know what it is you saw. It is what I feared would happen one day, he replied finally. Were they ghosts? The old man ignored his question, went down to one knee to level his face with his own, and stared at him deeply. Look at me, child. Njal obliged and looked back. The usually friendly and somewhat naughty grey eyes were now filled with concern. Njal did not understand why, and it made him feel nervous. What you have seen is a glimpse into the spirit world, a gift that very few people possess. Yet, something rare is often something very much desired. Hjalmar looked around to see if they were still alone, then turned his attention back to Njal. Where you are going, revealing this gift can bring you in grave danger. I ask you now, my boy, for the sake of your own safety and all you hold dear, keep it secret at all costs, he said, as he firmly grabbed Njal's shoulders and stared at him even more penetrating than he did before. It made him want to look away, but it was as if somehow Hjalmar had made it impossible for him to do so. Do you understand me? Njal felt overwhelmed by the many questions going through his head. He was about to agree, until he could no longer resist the urge to ask the one single word that lay on his tongue. Why? The old man twisted his mouth lightly, dropping his shoulders and letting go of his stern expression. Sometimes I worry you are too curious for your own good. I understand you have many questions, but they will have to wait for your own safety. I promise you that the next time we see each other, I'll answer every question you may have. But can't I just stay here, with you? I don't want to go there. Hjalmar grinned and sighed. Oh, Njal, if only you were a child of my own, I would have loved to keep you here. Yet you are not my child. Though he may not show it, your father needs you more than you might think. Every Northman belongs with his true family, which means your destiny lies in Loki now. Njal sighed. He still had many questions. Who or what was he to watch out for? What was the danger that was lurking? And what did it have to do with what he saw in the sky? As much as he wanted to ask what was on his mind, he took heart of the old man's words and spoke no more. Hjalmar then kneeled once again, tightly grabbing Njal's shoulder. I need you to promise me, Njal, to calm this old man's heart. Keep it secret. The emphasis on these last three words led Njal to realize it was a demand he could not decline. He looked the old man into the eyes as his heart pounded wildly in his chest. He reached for his mother's amulet, held it through his clothes, and swore resolutely, I promise.